and welcome to the pilot episode of the Needles, Knots, and Wool podcast. It's about nalbinding and other ancient crafts with a modern twist. I'm your host, Amy Vandervoors. Today's topics include the podcast's focus and what is nalbinding. Nalbinding is my crafting passion and has been for several years now. I love pushing the craft to see what you can do with it and learning about traditional techniques. Fiber arts crafting podcasts are popping up all over the place about knitting, crocheting, dyeing, spinning, needle felting, and so much more. But I have yet to find one about my favorite craft. The focus of this podcast will be nalbinding, spinning, and yarn. Other crafts and subjects obviously will find their way in here and there because as much as I love nalbinding, I like other things too. Nalbinding specific subjects will cover stitches, books, patterns, history, research papers, techniques, fabric properties, events around the world, project challenges, interviews, and the like. Currently, I'm planning on a monthly show so I can still focus on my craft supplies and teaching business. We'll see how it grows. So, what is nalbinding? It's an ancient craft much older than knitting and crochet, and surviving fragments have been dated to several thousands of years ago. Some consider it to be the precursor to knitting because there's a stitch called the tarim or Coptic stitch that looks like twisted knitting stitches, though the structure is quite different when you stretch the fabric widthwise. The craft has survived, almost being lost to obscurity, and it's most well known in the Nordic countries. Each stitch is a loop that forms a knot into previous loops of the fabric, so that the stitches are interjoined. The fabric does not unravel, so it's both the blessing and the curse of the nalbinder. You won't drop stitches, but if the work needs to be undone, each stitch needs to be taken out individually. There's no easy frogging here. To create the stitches, you use a large needle or nawl, which is the Norwegian word for needle, and lengths of yarn. Loops are often put on the thumb, and some are picked up behind the thumb as the stitch is made. Those stitches can be worked flat for those who prefer, or if you have arthritic hands. That's what I have for you today. I just wanted to give an overview of what I expect the podcast to be. Our next episode will cover Getting Loopy, a gathering of nalbinders. It's a conference in Decorah, Iowa on April 2nd and 3rd, 2016. I'll be attending, and I hope to see some of y'all there. Music for this episode is Nova by Ahrix and used under a Creative Commons Attribution License. This podcast is brought to you by Shy Red Fox, your source for nalbinding needles, handcrafted items, and my daughter's line of Giga Squirrels needle felted items. You can find me as Shy Red Fox, all one word, at my Etsy shop, Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, and The Shy Red Fox on Tumblr. You can email the podcast at podcast@shyredfox.com. See you next time on Needles, Knots, and Wool. Thank you so much for listening.